Effective 4 p.m. today, we're telling Nova Scotians, stay out of the woods. We are restricting travel and activities that really aren't necessary for most of us. Hiking, camping, fishing, and the use of vehicles in the woods are not permitted. Trail systems through woods are off limits. Camping is allowed, but only in official campgrounds. The fine for violating any of these bans is the same as the fine for the ban on burning, $25,000. And if you're a smoker, for God's sakes, be mindful of where you're butting your butt out. If you don't, and you cause a fire, we will hold you accountable. So what does this mean if you have a home or cottage surrounded by a wooded area? We strongly encourage you to stay out of those woods, regardless of where they are.
What's crazy?
This is from Elon Musk. He posted this on August 5th, so 4 days ago. 41 million views, over 41 million views. But I need to go through and collect all of his cryptic tweets, because he puts them out a lot. Remember the Roman Colosseum when he did? Then he changed his name to Keck Maximus. There's something going on there, so I need to go ahead and do that. I'm going to do it soon and just string all of them together and just see what's going on with a lot of these cryptic texts he puts out like this. A lot of times not even saying anything, just putting it out the image or the GIF. So there's that.
So this ban in Canada of people going out into the woods, this plasma fire lockdown they've instituted in Canada, it was part of a bigger video that I'm making. I haven't finished yet, but I decided this needs a video of its own because it's a major milestone and a marker on the timeline of where we are. In fact, I've also said in the past that C-19 operation was a trial run, a rehearsal, a dress rehearsal for what would come in the future regarding plasma fire. A worldwide martial law would be required to be installed when the general public becomes aware of the nature of these electric wildfires. And that's why they keep people in the dark about these fires while they're happening, quietly doing what they can to combat them. But we've reached a point where they're locking down Canada because they've had almost twice as much acreage burn already this year as last year. And last year they probably had twice as much fire as the year before, etc., etc. If you're aware of the plasma fire phenomenon, this tweet by Elon Musk is not that cryptic. It is not that, oh, I wonder what he means by this. It's not just the horse that's on fire. Notice all the fire surrounding the horse, coming from the ground. It's a reference to the reality of what's happening all around us. But you still have a lot of people saying it's land grabs, New World Order, they're just doing this for control so they can implement their climate lockdowns, smart meters, smart cities, blue things don't burn, lasers, there's a lunar eclipse on that day, maybe that had something to do with the fire, and it's first day of Mercury retrograde. Matt puts out this video today with the thumbnail on it of his Matt's NPC neighbor saying climate change is real and it's getting too hot for humans, and there's Matt with the bluebird on his shoulder. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay, what a wonderful day, saying to his NPC neighbor, the only change is that they changed their slogan from global warming to climate change. That's a coping mechanism, a denial of what's happening around you in order that you can maintain functionality within the environment. You have to block things out of your field of view and refuse to acknowledge the reality of what's happening around you so you can continue whistling through the day zippity-doo-dah with that bluebird on your shoulder. And that's what the entire world has been doing for 7 years. This is why they've kept the general public in the dark, because otherwise the general public says, these are the evil not-nilk minions and their directed energy weapons and we need to raise hell.
To stay out of those woods, regardless of where they are.
What's crazy is that we used to wonder what they would get by burning down national parks and other public land. Well, here's the first thing they get. it, total control. Now we have no chance of knowing how those fires are starting. And if you're thinking this is just happening in Canada, well, you're sorely mistaken, my friend. This kind of policy could very well be enforced in a state like California, which is also facing huge fires. And that's exactly what I've been telling you. The purpose of these fires isn't just to take away land. They could also be used to enforce dystopian policies. And that's exactly what we're seeing across the border. Don't you forget, Canada is being governed by a globalist like Mark Carney, and we all know the end goal for the World Economic Forum is to control our entire lives.
We're developing, through technology, an ability for consumers to measure their own carbon footprint. What does that mean? That's where are they traveling? How are they traveling? What are they eating? What are they consuming on the platform? So, individual carbon footprint tracker. Stay tuned. We don't have it operational yet, but this is something that we're working on.
Another fire story I want to share comes from France because the southern part of that country is on fire, and that blaze reminds me a lot of what we saw in LA.
Thousands of people have been forced to flee villages in southwest France as huge wildfires continue to burn, the worst in 80 years.
I'm telling you, this is going to be the new normal now, and unless we start raising hell, we will be forced to live with these tragedies, and I don't think any of us want that. Now, so much smoke over the northeastern US because this year the fires in Canada have already burned down nearly twice as much land as they did in all of 2024.
It's a doomsday morning sunrise. Doomsday morning sunrise. There we go. There's the doomsday morning sunrise. Doomsday. Truly is the zombie apocalypse. Surrounded by people who are just oblivious. And if you point your camera straight up, you can see blue sky, but other than that, we're saturated 360, and it's like there's an inversion that keeps it pressed to the ground. These guys are practicing their golf swing. Hitting the long ones. I want to watch them take a swing. There you go. Off into the apocalyptic sunset. The iconic representation of idiocracy. That's what those guys are doing. That's what I'm surrounded by.
Hey, what's up, guys? Hope everybody's doing well and having a great day. Welcome back to another live stream. When I finished up yesterday's live stream, I was looking around some of the tabs that I had open, and I had several open, as I always do, and I was quite shocked when I zoomed out on this tab. I think it was well, this is one I've been watching, the Arizona Grand Canyon wildfire. But when I zoomed out on this one, I knew there were a lot of wildfires out in the western United States. But it looked like the number had doubled since the last time I was over here and checked the total. Over 400 wildfires, primarily west of the Mississippi. Hey, what's up, everybody? Roach, Rail, Free Truth, Graham Giles. Hello, Graham over in Scotland. Our friends across the Atlantic, AZ Watchwoman. But back to the wildfires, the temperatures. I got other things to share with you guys. Geoelectric maps. All this stuff is tied into one or two possible things. Could be the Earth's core, as Graham has been sharing information with me about that. But if you look at this map here of just the United States, it's a bit overwhelming. Our friends up in Canada are dealing with the same thing. And this isn't just a Canada-US issue. Look at all the wildfires up in Canada. There's several hundred up there as well. The smoke is traveling thousands of miles. The red circles and the purple circles you see are wildfires that are out of control. And this list, too, like the list down here in the United States, has grown exponentially just in the last 10 days. This stuff's getting out of control. And it's a bigger issue than I think people realize. Do you realize that I believe it was yesterday or today, it was a 97-degree afternoon high over in Tokyo? And it's supposed to be, let me show you guys what I found. It is going to be tomorrow. My wife, they set records in the month of June and July. What is going on? And not only are the wildfires, like I said, in Canada, in the United States, I have an ominous photo to share with you guys from the United States, but this is a global phenomenon. Check this out. I'm over here at Google Earth. And what I've done, I've imported into Google Earth all of the active wildfires right now as I do this video. I did this morning before I started this live. We've actually got wildfires up in Iceland. It's as if the whole Earth is burning somewhere in some capacity. Some of the wildfires are bigger than others. If you come down here to the Grand Canyon, you click on this, look at it, turns into a big blossom. Look at all the wildfire activity by the Grand Canyon. Oh, it's unbelievable. Come over here to California, you got the same thing, but not quite as big, which is rare. Normally, it's just the opposite. There's more wildfires in Southern California than Northern Arizona. But if you zoom in close, you can see there's plenty of wildfire activity there. Look at all that. Dozens and dozens, and the smoke is billowing across the country. Speaking of smoke, check this out. Here's a photo from Zoom Earth that is just a few hours old. In fact, this was from this morning. Look at this, in central Kansas. That's the sky above Hays, Kansas, Great Bend, northwestern Kansas. That is a massive plume of smoke. Look at the storm lines up there in Nebraska. I zoomed in on those a little bit better for your viewing pleasure. Look at that. Those expand over 100 miles. And there's a row of, what look like shelf clouds? Spanning from Beatrice, Nebraska to Broken Bow, Nebraska, actually all the way up to northern Nebraska. Those span a couple hundred miles at least. They're just unusual to go along with the smoke-filled air. But back to Google Earth. These are the wildfires in the western United States. The whole Earth is under, like I said, some sort of a wildfire issue. Going up here to Canada, you can see there's hundreds and hundreds. Coming over here to the eastern United States, where there have been issues in northern New Jersey with regard to, they actually showed the ground smoldering in New York. I haven't verified that video yet, but I do believe the video is valid. Wildfires in Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, you name it, there's wildfires. Down in Florida, of all places. They do get wildfires from time to time. I lived in Florida, I actually saw a few here and there. Some of those could be controlled burns, but as you can see, all across Cuba, all across northern South America, all across Brazil, look at South America. The vast majority of South America is dealing with wildfires. Wait till you see Africa. Look at this. These are wildfires in Africa. Unbelievable. I mean, seriously, unbelievable. You click on it, and it just opens up everywhere you go. Big blossom of wildfires. You click on one, it turns into 10. Going over to one of our favorite places. Look at Madagascar. No, put those out. Come on. We don't want Madagascar. Look at that. Madagascar. Look at all the wildfires. That's where our giant trees are at. We know there's giant tree stumps there. Of course we do. We've seen them on Google Earth. Look at all the wildfires. Dozens and dozens, possibly hundreds. This is a worldwide issue. And Earth goes through these cycles, and it's been prophesized. The Hopi have talked about it. The Maya, look at down here in the South Pacific. This is a subtropical climate. You wouldn't think this would be full of wildfires, especially in here around the Philippines, Malaysia area, Indonesia. Wildfires everywhere. Cambodia, Vietnam, all over Eastern Asia, all around the world, guys. Everywhere you look. Up in the desert of northern China, wildfires. They're everywhere. Spanning through Europe, over into France. I'm just kind of taking you guys around the world. Look at all the wildfires in Europe. Wow, unbelievable. Up in Finland, Norway, Belgium, the Netherlands, France, Portugal, Spain. Unbelievable. Speaking of temperatures, are they going hand in hand? Are the high temperatures creating some of this wildfire activity? You know it has to be partially responsible. Hey, Graham, heat plumes are leaking from the core. Thank you, Graham, for the super chat. And you know what? We've been talking about the Earth's core. I know you have, and I've got the emails that you shared with me. Thank you, Graham. In fact, I have a folder on my desktop with the emails about the Earth's core. We've been talking about the Earth's core and the outside chance that maybe the Earth's core has something to do with the flickering light phenomena. Maybe the Earth's core is sending EMPs up through the surface somehow. Somehow they're getting through and attaching to electrical substations and power lines and things like that, creating problems with just basic outdoor lighting, indoor lighting. People's cell phones have been acting up. I gotta be honest with you. My cell phone yesterday was acting up. My wife sent me a text, and she's for about 10 days now. But back to the wildfires, going up to the South Seattle area, Bear Gulch. Look at this one here. This one's been going on for 30 days. 5,100 acres burning. 3% contained. There's wildfires all over the place, and the smoke that goes along with these wildfires is creating very, very poor air quality, obviously. That just goes hand in hand. We had air quality down here in Phoenix about 3.5 weeks ago of 500. I looked at it like 500. I didn't even know it went that high, number one. Then I got to looking at it, and 500 is the max. So you know it was probably above 500. Just unbelievable. But there's wildfires all around the world. Temperatures on the rise all around the world. And I'm just curious. I'm over here at Ventus Sky, and I'm looking at the temperatures right now. And this is out here in Arizona, which we know it gets hot out here, okay? That's what we signed up for. We know it gets hot. These are temperatures right now at 5 centimeters above the ground. 127 degrees Fahrenheit. Just kind of moving it around, 124, 129. That'll be south and west of Phoenix. I'm just curious, what's the temperature? What was the high temperature in your location today? Out here, where we're at, the afternoon high was, I'll just share it with you right here. Here we go. In fact, I think it's right now, 114 degrees. You got to be kidding me, right? And look what it's supposed to be tomorrow. You ready? 116. 87 in Michigan, 24 Celsius, Cian, 48 above the ground. 127 degrees Fahrenheit. Just kind of moving it around, 124, 129. That'll be south and west of Phoenix. I'm just curious, what's the temperature? What was the high temperature in your location today? And it's 93 there in central Italy. So what's causing all these hot temperatures? what's causing all of the wildfire activity. Once again, the wildfires around the earth are just simply off the charts, especially here in the western United States and Canada. Between the two, there's probably near 1,000 wildfires. No joke. There's 418, not counting Alaska. I think up in Alaska, there's like nearly 50. But if you factor in all the wildfire activity up in Canada, and for some reason this isn't showing me a total, I wish it would, but that's okay. We're just going to assume that there's over 100. I've seen other maps that show 200 up here in Canada, and the 400 here in the United States. That's over 600, 418, over 600 wildfires between Canada and the United States. Factor in all the other wildfires around the world, and you're looking at several thousand wildfires on practically every continent. In fact, I think every continent around the world. Thousands of wildfires currently underway, and it's not necessarily hot down in Australia right now. In fact, it's their winter in Australia. But look at all the wildfires. And I'm not going to talk in this video about ley lines. Some of you have heard of the ley lines that intersect around the world, and some of you maybe have not. But coincidentally, there's a ley line intersection right here in northern Australia where all this wildfire activity is currently at. There's an intersection right there. Ley lines are a pretty fascinating study. If you look into it, you'll see that some of the pyramids around the world are sitting on ley line intersections. Graham's very familiar with ley lines, and they are a very fascinating field of study. When the sun kicks into high gear, you can see on this graph the solar activity starting to go upward, right? Well, when it does, we could see an increase in auroras in the upper latitudes, depending on the strength of the solar flare and CME, and if it's Earth-directed. Let me tell you a little secret I've learned over the years. With these CMEs that come towards the Earth, there's always this drama about how fast they're moving. 1.9 million miles per hour, 2.5 million miles per hour. However you slice and dice it, usually takes 36 to 48 hours, maybe 50 hours to reach the Earth. But it's not the fast ones, it's not the speed, it's the slow ones. Yeah, the slower ones create more dramatic auroras and geomagnetic storms, not the fast ones. So just remember that. If you ever remembered anything that I've ever shared with you guys, just remember that. The slower the solar storm, the more strong it's going to be. Not necessarily the fast one, but they do move fast. Trust you me. I clocked one time. I did the math because of the arrival time. But here's a look at what I was just like. I showed you guys the screen grab. This is over at zoom.earth. This is what it looks like in the middle of the US. This is what it looked like about 10 hours ago. Look at that map. You talk about dry and hot. No wonder there's over 400 wildfires right now west of the Mississippi River. Looking at that map right there, that is one ominous looking sky. And I think there's wildfire activity right in that exact location. Let's take a closer look. Here we go. Actually, no. There are no wildfires in that area. So that smoke is either coming from somewhere else or there's something else going on in central Kansas. Let's go back to look at that. Is that a dust storm? Gotta be a dust storm, right? And because there's no wildfires there. That just tells you how dry it is. And as I mentioned in a video a couple days ago, the transition between El Nino and La Nina creates droughts in very specific areas. It's uncanny how specific it is during these transitions. And obviously it's very, very dry here in this area to create a dust plume. At first I thought that was a smoke plume, and maybe it is. Maybe there's something new going on there. But that spans nearly 100 miles. Look at the size of that thing. That is unbelievable. Hey, Graham, thank you for the super chat, buddy. Can you overlay dormant fault lines and new quakes? Absolutely, I can. I mean, that is seriously an ominous looking view. Looking down on Kansas, you would think that there was a very large wildfire there. And the unusual cloud configuration up in Nebraska, there's some really weird air movement going on in Kansas and Nebraska. Just today, this is from today, that's a very new image. And there's also been earthquake activity in that same location. This is from today, that's a very new image. And there's also been earthquake activity in that same location. Probably 25 miles from that ominous looking cloud, this one right here, there was an earthquake today, or yesterday, underneath that cloud of dirt, dust, smoke. Take your pick. It's one of the three. And there's an earthquake right there, 2.6, 85 in 2025, 24 hours ago in that same location. What are the odds? Is it just a coincidence? Maybe so, but I don't necessarily believe in coincidences. And there's been a small swarm over here in Kansas. Not necessarily a big swarm, but when you have a cluster of 4 earthquakes just north of Hallville, Kansas, there's no fault lines there. Like we just looked at the fault lines around California and even the Sierra Nevadas. That is unusual. You just want to see a penguin sitting there, right? Let's look at the dates. 8-4, 8-2, 8-3, and 8-2. So between 8-2 and 8-4, 48 hours, they saw 4 earthquakes in that location, and then one more just to the north and to the west. So 5 earthquakes in, 48 hours? 72 hours in north central Kansas. Super weird, not necessarily something you see every day. That is, coming back over here to Google Earth, here's another look at the wildfires that I inputted onto Google Earth. And guys, there's literally thousands going on around the world with the high temperatures going on all around the northern hemisphere from Tokyo to Rome and everywhere in between. There are wildfires from, I think, Tokyo. Let's just go look real quick. Are there wildfires in Japan? I certainly wouldn't doubt it. Oh, absolutely. We've got wildfires in Japan, high temperatures in Japan, and sure enough, 1, 2, 3, probably 15 wildfires over in Japan. High temperatures, wildfires galore all across the northern hemisphere. What is going on? There are some places that are pleasant, as we saw in the chat. Some people, it's like 65 really does. Speaking of difference, this is unbelievable. Guys, the wildfires are off the charts this year. When I looked at this map the other day, like I said, the wildfires just doubled. It seemed like to me overnight, but we've been talking about here how time seems like it's moving faster. So it didn't surprise me because when I looked at this a few weeks ago, it seemed like a few weeks ago, or a few days ago, there weren't this many wildfires, especially not this big. The one up here, when you click on it in northern Arizona, that's the Dragon Bravo fire. It's up to 126,000 acres right now. Here's a look at it live from Cold Studio at the rim of the Grand Canyon. There it is, and that smoke is drifting, or was drifting over into Las Vegas. And here's the Gifford Fire in Southern California, 83,000 acres. The red or the orange areas are, I believe, mandatory evacuation zones. And I don't think that they've got that one much more contained. Let me look. Let me give you guys an update on that one also, since we're here. Yeah, it's this one right here. Okay, that's gotten big. Look at all the bright orange you see are active fires that are spreading out. Let's refresh this. Are they still at? Okay, well, it hasn't updated today, but it's showing 83 when you zoom out, 83,000 acres, but it's being reported, it hasn't updated. 65,000, 9% contained, so it's got a long way to go. But wildfires galore, temperatures off the charts all around the northern hemisphere. And guys, it's not slowing down anytime soon. It's supposed to be very hot for the next several days. And you can just tell by looking at this map.
I'll just throw this in here. Someone noticed a confirmation that the difference between the burned and the unburned posts has to do with their construction. The unburned posts have a flat top. The burned post has a top that's cut at an angle. This one's burned. The top of the post is cut at a slant, at an angle. This one's unburned, flat top. This one's burned, cut at an angle. This one's flat top. We'll speed it up a little bit here. Cut at a slant, burned, flat top, no burn. Slant, burned, flat top, some burn, but it clearly doesn't burn to the degree that the other ones do. This pattern of every other post, and there isn't the line, like you see here, between the burned post and the unburned block. And then the next one, flat top, unburned. The next one, slanted cut on the top of the post, burned. Flat top, unburned, slanted top, burned. This is an indicator of the difference between the posts. They intentionally put every other one as one of these that has the top cut at an angle, indicating there's something else about the construction of it. They intentionally alternated this, each post staggering it, a flat top, an angled top, a flat top, an angled top. There is something about the construction of them, whether it's a piece of rebar stuck through it, or a metal casing that the post goes down into. Like here, you see the metal casing at the bottom of these? Maybe those other ones, every other post gets one of these metal casings. You see how these are just barely sticking up above the ground? Maybe the ones that burn are in a metal casing that's buried beneath the surface of the ground. Either way, there's definitely a difference in the construction of them. And the fact that every other one, the burned ones have the slanted cut on the top, the unburned ones have the flat top. Probably so that as they're constructing the guardrail, they can easily identify the one that's supposed to go next, whether it's that it's got rebar in it, and for inspection purposes. Someone left this comment in that last video that I made, drawing my attention to that pattern, which I hadn't noticed. So I thought I would relay that to you. This is confirmation that the construction of the guardrail includes a different type of post every other post. And that's the one that burns with the slanted cut top. And there's also something else about the post that is different. The slanted cut is just an identifying marker. The something else about the post that is different is what causes it to be more conductive of the electricity and burn in the way that it does. So, I just thought that was interesting enough I should throw that in. The fact that the burned ones have a slanted cut on the top of the post, the unburned ones have a flat top. With a little bit of burning, this indicates even the ones with the flat top that don't have the additional conductive material within them, they are drawing some of the ground current electricity, but the ones with the slanted cut on the top have something else about them that causes them to draw the electrical current from the ground to a greater degree. This is confirmation. I hadn't noticed that. Good eye. Thanks for the heads up on that. And just as a final piece of brain gravy, this is a video that came across my feed today. Apparently it was posted 5 days ago. Says something is seriously wrong with the bees and it's not what you think. And he goes through multiple examples of these attacks where people are being attacked by swarms of bees. And this is just within the last few months, all within 2025. He gives you 4 or 5 different examples. I'm trying to see if I can scrub through. I don't know how picky he is about people using his material, so I don't want to show you too much. This is another guy, Happy Plumbing. In fact, I saw this guy's story on a different channel where he saves this old lady that's leaned up next to the car. Maybe we'll play it just to see if they'll show. He swoops in. This is actually a mainstream news broadcast, and catches her right as she falls. She was fainting from the bees that had stung her so many times, and he swooped in and scooped her up. These bee attacks, bees are dangerous in ways that they never have been before. One of the 5 or 6 examples that he gives you of people that have been attacked by bees recently is 3 horses that were killed. You know the old saying, enough to kill a horse? Yeah, these bees killed 3 horses, and it's not just the Africanized killer bees, but all of the bees are acting this way now, and this is in alignment with what Jay Dreamers said would happen when the magnetic field starts getting out of balance and the sun goes into flux and the magnetic field goes into flux. And that is what this guy indicates is his opinion, and he's some sort of rancher guy. He says he believes it's because of the electromagnetic, geomagnetic changes in our environment. Jay Dreamers refers to this as plasma possession, saying that people will become plasma possessed, animals will become plasma possessed, and even machinery will become plasma possessed. Another way of saying that might be EMF, electromagnetic frequencies, that affect us all in different ways. I'll talk a little bit more about that later and try not to interrupt myself like that too many more times. But plasma possession is what these bees are under the influence of. Experiencing, they're sensitive to the magnetic flux lines. They use it to navigate, and it regulates a bunch of other parts of their physiology as well. This is what Jay Dreamer said would happen. Things would begin to swarm, including humans. Locusts are just grasshoppers going into a frenzy, like when sharks go into a feeding frenzy. These bees are going into a frenzy. Side note, I've heard there is no genetic difference or physical difference between African killer bees and docile European honeybees that aren't known to kill large animals the way that African killer bees do. It's just a behavioral pattern, and they say you only have to introduce a few of these Africanized killer bees into a European bee colony, and they all pick up the behavior, and within a short time, all of the bees that were once docile and passive and harmless European honeybees are now Africanized killer bees because they've picked up the behavior pattern. Heads up, be safe. So yeah, this guy, he starts explaining how he believes it is due to the magnetic field. I'm trying to stop it on that image right there. And I'll just scrub through here. I'll leave a link in the description. It's not scrubbing for me anymore. Come on, scrub for me. I'll leave a link in the description. I thought it was interesting. All of the examples of people that are getting attacked by bees, and that he believes it's due to the changes in the environment, which are also the causative factor leading to the flashing lights and the plasma fires, these electric wildfires, this dirty electricity phenomenon is affecting the bees. And so Jay Dreamer's forecast and prediction that things would begin to swarm and frenzy in ways that they didn't before appears to already be coming true with the bees.
In France, in this one little tiny town, 24 people were injured, 3 critically. And they believe what happened is that, according to the mayor, the incident may have been related to Asian hornets threatening a beehive that was in a roof terrace of a downtown hotel. And that happened more than a decade ago, those Asian hornets. But he believes, who knows if this is true, that this likely caused the bees to become aggressive because they were basically fighting with the hornets. So
because 10 years ago, some Asian hornets moved in. That's why 24 people were injured this year. She noticed how phony that sounded when she chuckled and said, who knows if this is true or not. They're trying to give you reasons that will pacify your curiosity that don't pass the smell test. Because 10 years ago, some Asian hornets showed up? No, it's something more recent, and it's not just causing this particular hive that getting harassed and bullied by some Asian hornets. It's causing bees worldwide to behave in this way.
Were stung over a period of about 30 minutes on Sunday morning. Firefighters, medical teams, they raced out there. Police even set up a security perimeter. 3 people were evacuated in critical condition, obviously with an allergy to bees. Yeah, and it's just not something. One of them was a 78-year-old person. They had to be resuscitated after cardiorespiratory arrest. They're now in stable condition. The others are in good health. Wow. We've heard of killer bees a long time ago.
Sure.
And it almost sounds like this is the case.
Now, this happened in a more...
Chase, what happened?
Tram, Scottsdale police tell us it was a group of 3 workers that were actually on the roof here at the V at Silverstone retirement community here in Scottsdale. They were on the roof when they were attacked by a swarm of bees. I actually just spoke with someone who lives here at the community. While he didn't see it happen, he said that he heard a bunch of screaming earlier today and then learned it was a bee attack. Now, we were told that all 3 of those workers were rushed to the hospital by Scottsdale Fire. We learned that 2 of those workers are now in stable condition, but unfortunately one of them did die at the hospital from their injuries.
On July 25th in
This isn't the typical call Diosdado San Roque responds to while on the job with Happy Plumbing.
Just a normal plumbing day.
San Roque and his partner finished a plumbing job in Santee when they drove into a swarm of bees.
They just started forming a clump on her tree.
Kyle Ritchie says his mother-in-law ran inside after the bees started attacking her while she was taking out the trash. While Ritchie was taking care of her, they realized she wasn't the only person outside.
They wanted to check on my wife's grandma, too, because she was taking a nap in the yard. And we came out and she was covered in bees.
Video shows them spraying the insects with Raid and pouring rubbing alcohol on their bodies for protection. That's when San Roque pulled up to the scene.
I knew that's somebody's grandma, and kind of got a flashback of my grandma, and I knew I just, how to do something about it.
Too weak to keep running after hundreds of stings, video shows Richie's grandmother-in-law, Juana, leaning on the car to hold herself up as San Roque approached.
She spoke to me in Spanish, telling me that she's about to faint.
When she collapsed, he caught her before her head hit the ground, trying to drag her away from the swarm.
I was just trying to wipe all the bees off her, but once I started doing that, they came at me.
His partner sprayed a fire extinguisher over them, struggling to disperse the bees, but San Roque says they stung him at least 20 to 30 times while trying to shield Juana from the swarm.
I was trying to take the bees my way and get it off the lady, but once I did that, I got into our cabin.
Until about 10 minutes later, the Santee Fire Department arrived with a helicopter using the strong winds to clear out the crowd of bees.
On July 10th,
I got into our cabin.
Until about 10 minutes later, the Santee Fire Department arrived with a helicopter using the strong winds to clear out the crowd of bees.
10 minutes later, they showed up with a helicopter to disperse the bees. That means this is a protocol that they have already established and that they have practiced. Because there's no way within 10 minutes they could respond in a real emergency with a helicopter to disperse bees if they hadn't already practiced and pre-established this as a standard protocol. There's no way that someone says, hey, we're having a bee problem, and someone says, hey, I got an idea. Maybe we could deploy a helicopter. Yeah, hey, maybe that'll work. There's no way the dispatch would deploy a helicopter. They would say, we will call pest control services for you, but this is 911 emergency, and you're talking about bees. There's no way that the helicopter pilot would say, sure, yeah, that's an uncanny idea, but I'll give it a shot. It just might work. And swoop in below the standard height. They have to remain a certain altitude unless they're by an airport. They would lose their jobs, the liability involved. There is policies and procedures and red tape. There is no way that within 10 minutes in a real world emergency, they got a helicopter to the scene to use the rotor wash to disperse the bees if it wasn't already pre-rehearsed, practiced, standard procedure. Like within the last few months, they've realized we've had 15 bee attacks. We're going to have to come up with something. Anyone got any ideas? And in that focus group meeting, someone said, maybe we could try using helicopters since we've already had a few of these bee attacks. And it's real tough to figure out what we're going to do. Fire hoses? No, that's going to hurt the people. I got an idea. How about rotor wash of a helicopter? They said, you know what? Let's try that. Let's practice. Get a beekeeper out in the field, put the pheromones on him to get the bees into the frenzied attack mode, and then bring the helicopter in so we can test it. figure out how low they have to get in order for it to be effective to disperse the bees. What's the best pattern that the pilot should do? Back and forth in a circular undulating pattern? They would have had to have practiced this and established a protocol and a procedure in order to get a helicopter there within 10 minutes for the express purpose of dispersing bees and being able to swoop down that low in order to hit the people with the rotor wash from the helicopter blades. There's no way someone came up with this idea on the spot, just threw it. At first, it sounds like a retarded idea. You want me to do what? Yeah, you dispatch a helicopter to go disperse some bees. Huh? At first glance, it sounds ridiculous. Which is why you know that if they were able to respond to a real-world emergency within 10 minutes to use the helicopter for that purpose, they have already practiced this. It has already been a pre-established protocol that they've implemented. As a result, that means this is happening often enough that they had to come up with some tactics as part of a strategy to achieve the objective of fighting back against these bee swarms. They've had so many of these attacks, they've already started coming up with defenses, which includes deploying helicopters to fight bees. Are you following what I'm saying? I was a little aggro on that day, hadn't eaten lunch yet. Maybe I can explain it today with a little more chill and a little less aggro. They would already have to have a code when they get on the radio to dispatch them. We have a B5150 in progress on the corner of Center Street and Main Street, and the people on the other end, the fire department is who showed up in the helicopter, say, 10-4, roger that, we've got a guy firing up the helicopter right now, we got to go through our pre-trip inspection, make sure all systems are go, he's throwing on his gear, and we'll be in the air in 3 minutes in order to be on the scene in 10 minutes. That means this has been happening enough that the emergency response teams have already practiced and are quietly behind the scenes developing ways to try to combat these problems without alarming the public. Same reason they keep plasma fire under wraps. They're not going to tell the public, everybody beware, the bees have gone wild, and they're hostile and they're aggressive, and they go into this frenzy where they're operating on instinct, and they're killer attack bees all over now. Same reason they're not going to tell you, everyone, the trees are burning from the inside, it's from electricity coming up out of the ground. The people themselves will become a destructive force, even greater than the killer bees or the plasma fire, because they start acting a fool, saying, we better raise hell! This is Bill Gates training these killer attack bees! Those retarded, weaponized retards in the public need to be managed like livestock that they are. And to keep them from stampeding and becoming an enraged mob, a frenzied swarm of human beings, you gotta keep them in the dark. Just like keeping the eye covers over a bird or a horse. Reduce their sensory input and the stimulus in order to prevent the response behavior. Keep them in the dark about the fact that these bees are going wild. Just quietly develop protocols behind the scene, which now includes you as the viewer of this video. Now know that if and when there's a bee swarm attacking someone, you can call the fire department and the police, or the police and they'll dispatch the fire department, who will be on scene within 10 minutes using a helicopter to get rid of the bees. If you hadn't have already seen this, it wouldn't have occurred to you in the moment when it's happening that, hey, maybe we can get them to call in an airstrike on these bees. No, that's not reality. What are you, going to shoot a hellfire missile at them from the helicopter? What do you mean calling an airstrike on a swarm of bees? These days, that's a real thing. Your normalcy bias will try to tell you that's not a sign of the apocalypse. That's normal. I would expect that. Sure, that sounds reasonable. Yeah, totally. I mean, I didn't know that that's a policy and that's actually a thing that they do. But now that I think about it, sure, that's their job. They're the emergency response teams. Yeah, they've probably always used helicopters to disperse bees. No, it's a new thing because the bees are acting in ways that they never have before. So we're now calling in airstrikes on swarms of bees. That is a sign of the apocalypse. Don't let your normalcy bias talk you out of acknowledging the reality of what's going around and turn into something like Matt that goes, nah, the only change is that they changed the name from global warming to climate change. Besides that, everything's normal. That's a coping mechanism that people use, a form of denial, a disassociation. They compartmentalize and disassociate from the reality of what's happening around them. I'll stop with my rant now. My point is, they are now... And when you first think of this, you're like, okay, but that's not a useful tool to have in my bag of things to use and apply and deploy, because I'm never going to have to actually call the cops, tell them to send a helicopter because people are getting attacked by killer bees. That's never going to happen in my life. That's a useless tool to have in my bag. But the reality is, they've already established that as a useful tool to be deployed because of the frequency and the routine and the repetition of this occurrence happening over and over and over and over again, that they've developed this policy, this protocol, this procedure to be deployed when needed in the moment instantly. They've already got it ready to go. Call in a code B5150, bees gone crazy, and they got a guy standing by ready to jump in a helicopter to come blow those bees away, literally calling in an airstrike against bee swarms. That is a sign of the apocalypse, and though it may sound like something you're never going to have to actually use, because that doesn't sound like anything that would realistically ever happen in my lifetime, apparently it's happening often enough that you just might end up being in that situation.
I got into our cabin.
Until about 10 minutes later, the Santee Fire Department arrived with a helicopter using the strong winds to clear out the crowd of bees.
On July 10th,
and the Alabama Department of Agriculture has killed a swarm of Africanized honeybees in Jackson and St. Clair counties. You should report any unusually aggressive bee behavior to the department. Sorry, it just got to look scary.
Yeah.
And aggressive is not a word I want to hear in relation to bees.
That's
just one bee, I'm running.
Right.
If I see that many, I'm going to duck under.
Yellow jackets are really
Yeah.
nasty. Those are, if you've ever been stung by one of those are pretty rough too. So, but not many of anything, and I'm going to go the other way, right?
now you're
All of these examples we've just watched are in July, in the last 30 days. So watch this space. It seems like something that's happening with greater frequency and that we're probably going to see more of. And give other people the right of way when you drive, when you walk. Acknowledge that they're in a frenzied state, being stimulated in ways they never have because the environment is affecting people in ways they've never experienced. And you'll probably be better off. Just acknowledge you're surrounded by sharks in a feeding frenzy. Give them the right of way. Know that they're out of their mind. It's only just a matter of time before we start to lose our minds. Geomagnetic disturbances, EMFs, environmental stressors. It doesn't just affect the honeybees. It affects your coworkers. It affects the other people on the road. Acknowledge this, and it will probably behoove you to take it into account when you're dealing with people and interacting with people throughout your day. I've spoken of this before, referring to harboring and transference. Harboring lots of feelings of frustration and anxiety and stress, and then looking for a place to transfer all these feelings that are bottled up inside of them. They don't know where it's coming from or why they feel the way they do, and they're looking for a place to explode and say, you're the reason I feel the way I do. And they usually do it on someone who's just passing through their life. A cab driver, a waitress, a cashier at a convenience station. Someone who, when you blow up on them and they recoil from you and say, I never want to speak to you again, it doesn't affect you because you would have never saw that person again anyway. So people harbor all these feelings of stress that they're being subjected to from the stimulus of the environment, and they don't know why they feel the way they do, but they're looking for a place to unleash and open up that pressure release valve. And the way you know when someone's harboring and transferring is when their response to the supposed offense that was committed is disproportionate, because you didn't hold the door open for them as you were walking in or out of the convenience store, and you let it close on them, and suddenly they just explode. Or some other minor inconvenience. The supposed offense that was committed is responded to disproportionately, and they explode on you, releasing all of those feelings of anger and hostility and aggression and resentment and contempt and animosity and frustration that's been building up within them every day. They're looking for someone to unleash it on, and it's not got to be someone that's not their coworkers, their wife, their kids, someone who they have to interact with on a daily basis. They harbor it and bite their tongue and just keep it all inside when they're around those people, and they're waiting for a stranger to come along so they can identify you as the reason they feel the way they do and experience some relief from that pressure release. Someone just passing by in traffic, passing by at the convenience store. It's going to be someone you don't know for that reason, so they can unload on you and not have to experience the consequence of having done so the next day. Beware. Everyone's harboring massive amounts, and they're looking for a place to transfer it to. And when their response is disproportionate to the supposed offense that was committed, just know that's what you're dealing with. These bee swarms are harboring the effects of the environment that's stimulating them in ways to feel agitated and aggravated, and they become hostile and aggressive. And they disproportionately respond to the offense that was committed of the person walking by who brushed up against one of the bees, and one of them stung him, so all the rest jump into the frenzy. People are going to be acting the same way. They're just as stimulated by the environment. It doesn't just affect the bees. You're dealing with someone who's under the stresses, the environmental stress of electromagnetic frequencies of the geomagnetic variety. And allow yourself some latitude too. Recognize it within yourself that the person who you're feeling ready to rip a new one is probably not the reason you feel the way you do. And you're going to be just as prone and susceptible to this pattern of behavior as anyone else. When you feel yourself going into a frenzy, reel it in a little bit, take a step back, take a few deep breaths, and recognize you're under pressures, environmental stressors that you can't see. You're like living in a microwave. The electromagnetic frequencies.
Oh, now moving on, another story I want to share is all about the insane situation in Canada. I'm telling you, this is going to be the new normal now, and unless we start raising hell, we will be forced to live with these tragedies, and I don't think any of us want that. Now,
we need to start raising hell, according to him, because the diabolical, evil, tyrannical dictatorships of the New World Order and the Agenda 2030 and the World Economic Forum's people are doing this worldwide for their land grabs all around the world, because, minerals and stuff. Yeah. We need to raise hell is exactly why they've kept the general public in the dark about this the whole time. As I've said before, when the general public becomes aware of what's really going on, worldwide martial law will be mandatory, because they will try to raise hell. They are not capable of navigating this environment and acting in a mature fashion. They will insist someone must be held accountable. There needs to be a law against this. They're trying to do this to us. That level of mentality is exactly why we are all better off with the general public being blissfully unaware of what's really happening. And for those that do catch on and go, something weird about these fires, we're all a lot better off with them thinking it's the government doing it. Because if they realized no one's doing it, no one's in control of this, they would become out of control and start raising hell.
Demand might make it necessary to build new power plants and infrastructure. The cost passed on to consumers through higher electricity rates. Then on top of everything else, this massive data center will need cooling, which will require water, so there's concerns about water scarcity, which residents in Arizona are currently facing. This is definitely very interesting timing, given the fact that the Grand Canyon is basically destroyed, and what lurks beneath the Grand Canyon are all these uranium mines, and uranium can basically be used to power these data centers. And this data center, with some very suspicious numbers, will require a lot of power. But when it comes to this fire at the Grand Canyon, this is actually going to take us into our next segment. So this next video is crazy, and it's actually a video that I made. Now, it's not as crazy as the last segment, because that's where we're heading.
So did you hear what he was implying? That they want to build a data center and do some uranium mining, and that's why they're burning the Grand Canyon. I propose that this energy seems to be directed at places where it will do the least amount of damage. I reference here that in the year 2022 or 23, Siberia had more fire than the rest of the world combined. Yes, Siberia, where the average temperature is like -20 with 50-foot snowpack. Siberia, more fire in Siberia in the year 2023 than the entire rest of the world combined. Canadian fires is now a routine yearly thing. Well, guess what? 90% of the population of Canada lives within the lower 100 miles just above the United States. Within 100 miles of their southern border is where 90% of the population of Canada resides. The rest is all empty. So when you touch one of these plasma globes and it takes all of those little filaments that are dancing around, distributed around the whole globe, and draws them into one big stream of electricity drawn towards your finger, a similar thing may be happening, where they must do like a pressure release valve and decide to touch the globe here and draw massive amounts of current out there in some place like Siberia or Canada or the Grand Canyon. Because, or the wetlands, as one of the videos that I made recently showing the wetlands of Brazil, which are essentially like the swamps, like the Everglades of Florida, where nobody lives, and all of the fires they had in the wetlands. This is all part of a pattern that indicates if this is directed energy, they're directing it to the least populated places where it will do the least amount of damage. Touch the globe here and draw massive amounts of current out there in some place like Siberia or Canada or the Grand Canyon. Because if they don't intentionally draw it out in one place, then it will randomly go anywhere and everywhere. And this stuff should naturally be drawn toward places where there is more metallic conductive material. In other words, cities, places that are populated. But that's not what you see. 90% of this electricity-driven wildfire should be springing up within cities, and only 10% or less burning places that are in the woods without the infrastructure of the sewer lines and the phone lines and all the metallic infrastructure of a city. That would act as the conductor of this electricity, drawing the vast majority of this electrically driven fire towards urban areas, towards populated areas. But that's not what we see. We see the vast majority of this is coming up in places like Siberia and the boreal forests of Canada and the Grand Canyon, almost like it's intentionally being directed away from populated areas. But don't let the facts get in your way. You got your theories about uranium mines and lithium and data centers and New World Order and land grab and smart cities and smart meters. Carry on. We don't need you finding out the reality of what's going on here. Continue pushing that nonsense and reel in as many other people as you can and get them latched onto the same pet theory. We're all better off with you chasing those blue herrings. Blue things don't burn. Space lasers. Yeah, I got it all figured out.
But I made this video 2 months ago, and the thumbnail of this video happens to be, "Warning, is Arizona in great danger?"
One of the Muse messages for this video will be, once again, World on Fire by... Before we get to the Muse messages to close it out, one final thing. People are now saying that these fires create their own weather. And I would say correlation does not equal causation. They say, well, every time there's one of these fires, there's these giant clouds of smoke and the wind kicks up. Therefore, the fire and the smoke clouds must be causing the wind. That's like saying every time there's a car accident, there's these cars that are on scene with flashing red and blue lights. Therefore, the flashing red and blue lights must be causing the car accident because they're correlated. Every time you see one, you see the other, and therefore one must be causing the other. That's like saying every time the sun goes down, the moon comes up, so the moon must be causing the sun to go down. Or correlation does not equal causation, and both are related to a third factor. In the case of the sun going down and the moon coming up, one is not causing the other. They are both being caused by the rotation of the earth. Flat-tards, just shut the hell up. Done with you. Both are being caused by a third factor. One is not causing the other. Correlation does not equal causation. People are seeing these fires, and every time there's a fire, giant smoke clouds, there's these winds that kick up and come out of nowhere. The fires must be creating their own weather. Or they're both being caused by a third factor. A surge of a fluctuation in the magnetic field creates a surge of ground current. That ground current starts these electric wildfires that I call plasma fires, and simultaneously there is a phenomenon called ionic wind or electric wind. One is not causing the other. They are both being caused by a third factor.
These fires inside the Grand Canyon are very weird. They're creating their own weather. When the firefighters go out there and they think they have containment, and the containment is getting higher, all of a sudden these clouds start shooting this wind everywhere, and it's creating more fire. This individual says, "I have lived in Flagstaff for 60 years. These fires are nothing like what we've had for most of those years. A big fire would be 10,000 acres. These fires are 100,000 plus and still growing. They are burning much hotter than they used to. A huge portion of the Kaibab Plateau, sorry if I'm saying that incorrectly, is burned up. So far this year, our annual monsoon rains have not showed up. It has been more windy than usual. I believe there are many reasons for this. This person goes ahead and blames climate change, but the residents around this location are saying they have never seen anything like this before, and these fires are also very strange. News and media said the reason...
One of the Muse messages for this video will be, once again, World on Fire by Sarah McLachlan.